All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending Sky Business Solutions Leadership Success Navigator webinar series. We have David Liddell, President and Founder of Sky Business Solutions, here to present today's webinar, How to Engage Your Biggest Expense, Your Employees. David Liddell is a trustworthy leadership development consultant and offers executive coaching for those who prefer one-on-one development training. I would now like to welcome David Liddell.
Good afternoon, everybody. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay. I'm sure my crew here will tell me if they can't. Welcome to all of those who had a wonderful weekend. Hopefully you had a long and fun weekend. Kind of tough to get back from a long weekend, but here we are. So we're going to get started right away. And for those of you who are not familiar with how this works, we do this once a month. It's always held on a Tuesday afternoon at 2 o'clock. We do it on I think it's the third Tuesday of every month. And the idea is to give some real sound information, skills around a particular topic related to leadership. We do try to stick to the 60 minutes so people know when to start, when it's going to end. And I think it's very important for everyone that you do have your worksheet handy, because I will ask you to answer some questions for yourself. This is for you. This is something that you can take away from today's webinar and use in your business. You can apply it to your own leadership capability or help others, depending on the role in terms of what you're doing in your organization. Let's see here. So what we'll do, we'll probably have a few minutes at the end. We always leave a little bit of time for a little Q&A. So if there's any questions that you have that you're thinking about as we go through this, please jot them in the Q&A section, and we'll make sure that that your information is captured, and I'll answer those questions at the end. But what we'll do is we'll move through this fairly rapidly. So we're not going to dilly-dally at any point in time, and this is where we'll have the worksheet handy. We'll stop at certain points so that you can think about yourself and your own development. And of course, we're going to have this recorded today, so it'll be made available. We'll make the worksheet, in addition to the PowerPoint itself, available to everybody. So if you're concerned about keeping notes along the way and you feel as though you've missed something, we will certainly make that available to you. So let's get started. I'm going to jump right into today's topic, which is about engaging your biggest expense, and we call that your employees. And yes, employees are also your greatest asset in the organization, but if you think about it, they are also very expensive. Now, I don't mind spending any kind of money as long as there's a return on that investment. So the reason why you have to engage your biggest expense is so that you get your return on investment. Because oftentimes organizational leaders don't think of it in those terms. They think of employees as cogs in the machine rather than human beings with needs, wants, desires. And finding a way to tap into that is always very, very important. So let's talk about what's going on in today's landscape. If any of you have read anything on employee engagement, the Gallup organization has done a tremendous amount of work and research, and their estimates are only 70% of U.S. workers are not actively fully engaged. And now that's not horrible news. It just means there's room for improvement. There's a significant amount of room for improvement. One of the biggest challenges we have today is that our workforce is changing. The demographic shift. We talk about the different generations. You talk about what's going on in today's landscape. There's an awful lot going on. Essentially, what we have to think about is that today the value of the people entering the workforce today and replacing the biggest demographic, the boomers, their value system is different. And it's not a lazy value system that some people think about. It's just different. But there's also a lot of similarities. So a big piece of this is understanding. The term employee engagement, and that's why we talk about engaging your most expensive or your greatest expense. Employee engagement has been a term that's been around for quite some time, and the mistake that a lot of organizations make is they think employee engagement is actually about the employees, and that's only the result. You get an engaged workforce or engaged employees when leaders do things differently. It all comes down to leadership behavior, and the culture that is developed during the time that these leaders are developing this. Okay, so you have to think of it in the terms of it's not about what the employees need to do, it's really about what the leaders need to do in the organization. And that's where this last point comes down to, is that leadership will drive engagement through how they shape the culture, their behavior, and we're going to talk about how that actually happens. So here's just something very quick on the Gallup study. This is where that 70% number came from. This was done in 2006. It's not that long ago. You might say, well, that's almost 10 years ago. Things have actually not gotten a whole lot better. They've perhaps gotten a little worse since then. And this is where it came from, and the definitions of engaged versus actively disengaged. You can see where how the percentages line up. Engaged is really employees are well connected to the organization. And I'll provide a better definition of that in a next slide coming up. The not engaged just essentially means that they're doing what they need to do to keep their job. Now, I know that sounds pretty harsh, but it's not as though it's that bad. What it means is that people are performing the basic functions of their job, their requirement, to stay employed, to help to try to get to the next level within the organization, but they're not truly engaged and understanding what it means, because the engagement piece is really a function of what the leaders do. The actively disengaged is 15% of the population. If we were to survey every company in the country, we're going to come in close to 15%. That essentially means you have people coming to work, and it's not as though they're not working or working hard even. They just may not be working in alignment with what is most important. It comes down to discretionary effort, decisions, and achieving results. And 15% are actively disengaged. And they even took it one step further, and they said, how much is this actually costing the U.S. economy? And they said the productivity loss is between $287 and $370 billion, which is a massive amount of productivity loss. So it's not as though companies need to panic and start figuring out exactly who is disengaged. Those people do become apparent over time. It's a matter of how can we improve the environment? How can we make it better? And what is it that we need to do specifically at all levels of the organization, leadership at all levels, to improve our current situation? So we do have a newer workforce coming into the workforce today, and like I talked about the values and what's important to them. Employees do want some more time. They do want a better work-life balance, and we know that's not 50-50. No one is naive enough to think that's the case. But they look, the newer generation, the X's and the Y's, they do look at their parents and said, you work too darn hard. I want more time to myself. I want a little more. I want a better balance. They also want to commute less. You'll find people that want to be closer to home. This is where telecommuting is coming into play. Organizations are being more flexible, work at home. It's not as though you're not going to get the results. It's how you actually understand this demographic, how you understand people, what motivates them, what drives them. It's more than just having a little more time to themselves. They want respect and recognition. Now, that has to be balanced out with the fact that people have to earn their wings. They have to demonstrate their capabilities. They have to put in their time. But I think what you'll find is the old school of management or old school leadership is more of a top-down command and control style approach, which respect and recognition aren't oftentimes viewed as part of those types of approaches. And then employees want more than a great salary. They want to be connected to something that's meaningful to them. They want to know that their contribution matters. It's critical in terms of coming to work every day, working hard, and looking at the value that they provide. And a big piece of that is understanding why decisions are made, how they need to be part of making those decisions, asking for input. Essentially, yes, money is important, but it's not number one. It's not a huge motivator as some organizations think. It will shape behavior, there's no question. But in terms of why do people do what they do, money is a requirement. It's a result. It's not necessarily a motivator. I'm not going to touch this slide in every aspect. I mean, I'm not going to go into deep detail, but there is a direct correlation between employee satisfaction, satisfied employees as it relates to engagement and customer retention. And you can see some of the statistics on the slide here. When you have a workforce that is well connected to what your business does, is understood, people feel responsible and connected to that value, and they know where they fit in the value stream of the business. These people do a much better job of retaining customers, and it's not just people who are front line touching the customers, but all through the organization. That ripples through the organization, and as it relates to customer satisfaction or customer retention, it is a huge factor. And I've listed the source there on the screen. You can certainly jot that down if you want to do a little bit more research there. But there's certainly a direct link there. So what is an engaged employee? Let's talk about that. I think it's very important to recognize, if I do have an engaged workforce, what does it look like, or what are the aspects of engagement that I need to look for? And a big piece of it is, being emotionally committed. Do people really understand what their job provides? Do they know how their contribution every day, they come to work every single day, they work hard, they put a massive amount of energy into it, and it's as much physical energy as it is emotional energy, but are they truly committed to their job, not just doing what they're supposed to do? It's kind of a compliance versus a commitment. You want them to be fully committed. Employees need to be driven by where the organization is headed. Why do we exist as an organization? Why do we exist as a company? And do employees understand that? And you might think, well, of course they do. Through my experiences talking with many different groups of people, leaders, that's not necessarily the case. It's implied that they understand, but a vision statement on the wall in your building is not enough. Managers and leaders need to talk about why it is you do what you do, and how individual employees can connect themselves to that. And everyone's going to do that a little differently based on who they are, what they value, and what motivates them personally. Because what motivates them personally there has to be able to connect that to what the company does. I touched on the third point here, understands their value in the organization. I think I've touched on that already. They have to know how their contribution matters. And then the last bullet here, consistently demonstrates the behavior required to support the organization's interests. The consistency is critical. If you're going to do anything, underline the consistency word there, because you want specific behavior consistently. This is what is going to keep people and cultures moving in the right direction, as well as what customers see. It doesn't take very long to it takes a long time to get a new customer, but it doesn't take very long to lose one. And that consistency in an engaged workforce, as well as how that translates into customer retention and customer service, is a big deal. So this is what an engaged employee looks like. So the question I have for you is, why do you want engaged employees? Why is this important? If you spend time and energy on training your leaders or helping your leaders build a culture that encourages engagement, because that's really what you're trying to do, there has to be a payback. You might do a survey, you might train your leaders, you might have a company-wide initiative to try to improve engagement. Well, that takes time. You're gonna have to spend some dollars to make that happen. So you want to be sure that there is a return. So the work that I've done, or the research that I've done, these are some of the things that are what you'd consider to be results of building engagement in your company. Enhancing interpersonal communication, the trust, absolutely paramount to building any strong organization. Can people work together effectively? That question is answered based on how high the trust is, how strong the business relationships are. And that doesn't mean people need to be buddy-buddy. What it means is people need to trust each other. People have to be able to challenge one another, and There has to be some openness and some transparency, and that is done through strong interpersonal communication. You will see greater involvement from employees, getting involved in more aspects of the business, essentially leveraging their discretionary effort, and accountability. And when I say accountability, that's not managers holding employees accountable. What that is, it's employees holding themselves accountable. So you build that culture or that climate of accountability, people naturally hold themselves accountable to the standards that you're trying to meet. You'll see better performing teams. You will retain and attract the better talent or the best talent. I mean, obviously, as we think about what's going to happen in the future, we have a math problem with the baby boomers retiring, 75 million being replaced by 45 million. We have a math problem. Your job, regardless of what your job is, if you think and act like a leader, your job is to build a better environment where you're keeping the best people. And if you build a strong environment, you're going to attract great people as well. Let me see, greater customer satisfaction is absolutely critical. We talked a little bit about that. I don't think I need to go into more detail there, but organizations that, especially who are driven by customer intimacy, need to think about what that means for their culture and building a stronger organization. So what they really need is to think about how that's going to translate into greater customer satisfaction, but essentially that's done through helping employees become more engaged. And of course, ultimately, all of this will lead to an improved business performance, and that's really what it comes down to. And improved business performance really falls into 4 general categories. And I think I use the balanced scorecard and just about everything we do relative to leadership and strategic planning, but better business performance relates to more satisfied customers, more satisfied employees, better performance operationally, and as well as strong financial performance. So think of it in those terms. So that's why you want engaged employees. So here are some elements of employee engagement. And you can see the schematic there. This came from, the illustration. The Gallup Management Journal came out with kind of a intersecting Venn diagram here: motivation, commitment, and self-worth. And if you think about just the basic elements of engagement, this is what you're looking for. So here are the elements. Employees want to know what's expected of them. Through my experiences, one of the biggest disconnect leaders have is they think they're setting strong and clear expectations. Employees mean to succeed, don't in the eyes of the manager or the leader. And what happens is there's a disconnect in terms of what the employee thinks is high performing versus the manager. So the employees need to know very clearly what's expected of me, what does success look like, how do I achieve, and when I don't, how do I fix it? How do I make it better? Do I have what I need? Will I be provided with the tools I need to improve and get better? 2, the employees have to feel they are contributing to the organization. They have to feel it. It's not what the manager thinks. It's not what all the different employees as a group think. It's what the individual employee feels like. Do I feel as though my contribution matters? 3rd is they want to be heard. They want their opinions to matter. And it doesn't mean that the organization is going to be driven through unanimous consent. What it means is that leadership is listening. They're asking questions. They're seeking input to shape the culture, shape the decisions that are going to happen. But employees will need to understand that it's not, they don't have the ultimate say, but if management, or a better way to say it is leadership, helps or works by gathering feedback, seeking input, and allowing that to shape some of their thinking, that will certainly help. And then, of course, the last item in these elements is employees have to have the opportunity to discuss their progress. They want to know how they're doing. And that goes well beyond the annual performance review. Those are good, they're required, and for those of you who have to do them, you know how daunting it can be to get them all done, especially if they're all done at the same time. Find opportunity to listen to employees. Give them feedback, not just constructive, but let them know when they're doing well and how they, what they need to do to continue to advance their progress. And excuse me if I'm choking here a little bit. It is still allergy season, so I'll apologize right now. All right, so this would be a good time to grab your worksheet because we're going to be asking a few questions here. And whether you write something down or not is up to you. I encourage you to jot down a few thoughts and ideas for yourself. This will get you thinking about engagement in your organization and what you might be able to do to have an impact to improve it. Because there's a number of ways. We're going to talk about how we do that in just a minute. But the first thing I'd like to do is I'd like to start with what motivates your employees. Now, so if you look on your worksheet, what motivates your employees? I'm going to give you a few seconds here to jot down what you think motivates your employees. I'm going to give you my list of based on some recent surveys on what the items are. But think about your organization. What are the things that are at the top of the list in your organization in terms of what motivates your people generally? Knowing that every person is motivated just a little bit differently. So I'm going to give you about 30 seconds to write down a few of your thoughts. Go ahead, item number 1. About 10 seconds more. So you should have a few things written down on your worksheet here. Here's a list that I've compiled from some recent surveys. And this is kind of a top 10 list, but these are motivators for individuals and organizations. Now you'll notice where money is. Money's number 6. You'll notice it's not number 1. People do want to be paid for their contribution. There's no question. They want to know that they're getting paid fairly. You'll notice that CEOs who are paid millions and millions of dollars, no one complains about them getting paid. Now, someone may, well, that's unfair. They're getting paid too much. Possibly. I think it really depends. But what it comes down to is most employees don't complain about that sort of thing. What they are concerned about is, am I getting paid fairly? But look at the number 1 item on the list. It's either public praise or recognition for performance. And what that comes down to, part of it is the individual. Some people don't like to be praised publicly, but they do like the recognition privately. What that basically or essentially says in a nutshell is, do people notice my contribution? So if you want to understand how to engage people, you need to understand first what motivates them. And again, think about individuals, but in general, here's a strong list. People want to be involved in the business or feel as though they're involved in the business. Does my contribution matter? Do my opinions matter? Is what I'm doing having an impact on top line, bottom line, some sort of productivity goal? We need to share with people what we're trying to accomplish in organizations so people know how to connect themselves. 3, big one, feel valued, self-esteem, confidence. Confidence is a huge issue for many individuals. And you might think that confidence comes naturally. Not for a lot of people. It does for some. Those who seem extremely confident are oftentimes compensating for the fact that they're not confident at all. But the number one reason why people leave their company, and you know this, but they leave their manager, but why they leave the company has a lot to do with the fact that they don't feel good about themselves at work. So if you want to quickly, demotivate your workforce, de-engage your workforce, is make people feel small and little. right? I'm not suggesting anyone on the line here or your organization has that, but these are some things that people truly value. People want the opportunity for professional growth, especially the newest generation. They're looking for opportunity to grow, get better. They want opportunity. They're eager. They're smart. Huge college loans. They want they want to use the skills that they were taught in school. But we have to help them. We have to help them grow professionally, because there's many things in the professional business environment that is not taught in schools. It just can't be, because it's really on the job. That's how we learn it. And then number 5, and I'll stop there, given direction by management. The direction is just that. It's direction. It's not telling them what to do. It's not directive management. It's supportive. It's providing, tell me where I'm going, give me the tools, and I'll help you achieve. And that's what managers need to do, leaders need to do. All right, so hopefully you can see here how some of these things might shape your thinking or help you as a manager or leader, helping your leaders understand what really motivates people. Well, here's a great list to pull from. And like I said, we'll be sure we get this PowerPoint to you when we're done today. So here are the how-tos for leaders. These are 4 things that you could roll out. Certain things. There's more. Each one of these has a number of elements. So I'm going to talk about the elements and what goes with each one of these. But I'm going to pause after each one to give you an opportunity to write down how effective your leaders are in these particular areas. And you'll see that's part of the worksheet. So items 2 through 5 relate to how effective are your leaders. Now, remember, this is for you and you only. So my suggestion is to be as honest and perhaps brutal with yourself as possible, to say, this is where we're doing well, but this is where we can certainly improve. So the first one is charting the course for employees. That's giving people direction. And I'm going to touch each one of these in more detail, so don't worry about me skimming through these. You have to create a working environment that drives engagement. You need opportunity. You have to provide opportunities for employee growth. Those don't happen automatically, so you have to look for opportunities. And you want to be a good business coach for your employees. That drives performance. And when I get to that, you'll understand that that's a very deliberate thing. It's not accidental. It does not happen naturally. It does for some people, however. All right, how-to number 1, charting the course for employees. So this is really, leaders need to understand where the organization is going, what that means, how work is accomplished, the value stream, meaning the front end of the value stream might be sales and marketing, and the back end is shipping a product or providing a service and taking care of your customers. A lot happens in between. You want to make sure that you're crystal clear on what your responsibilities are, how your organization fits into that value stream, and how you can connect each employee to that. You also want to have a set of mutually defined objectives, goals. Part of that is you need to define your goals and objectives. You'd be amazed at how many groups and teams and organizations I work with that don't write down their goals and objectives. And this is not a massive exercise. This is a very straightforward exercise that could be accomplished individually in 30 or 40 minutes, or as a group in the same amount of time. But what it's doing is it's getting people to think along the same lines. So let's touch on, and I'm going to have you get your hands on your worksheet there. Connecting employees to success is what I call it. Is your organization, are your leaders doing a good job of helping employees understand what success actually looks like? And oftentimes that's not the case. So let's talk about a few things that are important. First of all, you got to set direction. Where are we going? What are we trying to achieve? What are those objectives? What is the goal? What is our goal? Why do we exist as a group? These are very simple questions you can ask yourself, and even chat about those things with your team members. You want to be very clear on what factors are critical to your success. So you might say, as a team, one of our factors critical for success is that we provide 90% on-time shipment. It could be as simple as we will answer our telephones, we will answer our phone messages in 24 hours or less. What you're trying to do is you're trying to help people understand, well, what does success really look like? You want to have also specific measures of success. So if we say, well, these are the factors that are critical, meaning we will treat others like we want to be treated, might be a factor critical for success. Okay, great. But how does that boil down to something measurable? So you want to have specific measures. You also want to be sure that you're identifying key initiatives that help you reach the goal. Businesses are inherently flawed. And what I mean by that is you might say, hey, we're doing well, but we want to do much better. Well, you're perfectly designed today, whether it's a team or an entire organization, to get the results that you're getting, which means you're inherently flawed. So what you have to think about is, okay, we know what success looks like. We know how to measure it. What do we need to do to fix it? What do we need to do to get better? And that's where the identifying and implementing key initiatives and actions to improve on that. And then you want to involve the employees in that dialogue. You don't want to push it down on their heads, kind of a top-down approach. What you want is you want to engage employees in this dialogue to shape what are our critical success factors? How are we going to measure our success? Well, how do we improve this? Get people involved. And then people, your employees specifically, will have a very clear understanding of what success looks like. And then their tendency is to achieve and to achieve beyond their wildest dreams, because now they have a clear direction, clear understanding. So what I'd like you to do is take a moment here. I'll give you about 30, 45 seconds to jot down what areas could you improve in, or I'm asking how effective are your leaders at connecting employees to success. So think about these 5 bullets that I've listed and jot down a few thoughts. I'll give you about 45 seconds starting now. Go ahead. About another 20 seconds. All right, that's about 45 seconds. I am hopeful that you have a few things written down here, because these are things you can start tomorrow or today even. Think about what you want to do, where you can make one small gain. Anything you're going to do relative to employee development, employee engagement, improving leadership is incremental. You don't flip a light switch and things change overnight. What they do is you change your approach. You improve ways incrementally on how you work with people, treat people, engage people, and over time it builds. And as you look back over a week, a month, 3 months, you'll notice significant improvement. All right, so that's number 1. Let's talk about the how-to number 2, which is all about creating an environment that drives engagement. And we do that by creating strong business relationships. People think that leadership is a tell me, top-down, controlling approach, and it's not. Leadership is thinking about that you as a leader, you work for other people. You are there to serve others. Now, and what that means is you have to think about individuals and teams as groups of human beings or human beings that need your guidance, need your direction, need your support. And if you work effectively at building strong trust and relationships, you're going to get more from people. They're going to believe in you. They're going to free you. They're going to do many things that they wouldn't do had you just been telling them what to do without the broader perspective. So how do we build trust? What we need to do is it's all about how we communicate. It's how we treat one another. And trust in itself is a little tricky. Sometimes we don't know how to measure it, but we know what it feels like when we trust or don't trust somebody. And if an employee doesn't trust that their manager has their back, is there for them, is there as a guiding force for them, that's going to be a problem for you. All right. So what I want you to think about as it relates to building trust is think about how you communicate. It also speaks to what motivates people. trust. This is not actually in the content, but I'm gonna share what trust is all about. Trust. Well, let me go back to this slide. Trust is made up of three key elements. It's made up of integrity. So you have to operate and act from a guiding set of principles, values. You have to be compassionate, meaning you have to care about the needs of others. And as well, there has to be a certain level of competence. You have to know what your job is. You have to perform well. And for leaders, it's just not understanding the business. It's also being a leader. What does that mean? And that's how you personally build trust and strong relationships, is through how you communicate, what you do, and how you behave. So don't forget that communication is not just words. Communication is also people witnessing what you do. You lead by example whether you want to or not. So you could be leading by a poor example, by not doing the thing you said you did, as an example. So let's go to this next piece, and this will be item 3 on your worksheet, building a culture of engagement. And let's just talk about what these pieces are. So first of all, you need to establish good, strong level of trust in your organization, and this is through how you communicate. This is through how you keep your promises. This is a big chunk of it is leading by example. People want leaders who they trust and know will lead them in the right direction. Leading by example, increase trust through trustworthy actions. Okay, I've talked about that already. You want to establish a strong framework for effective communication. Effective communication is absolutely critical. Some people think communication and think about one thing, talking at people. And communication is mostly listening and understanding. So seek first to understand, then to be understood is a big, big deal when you're building a culture of engagement. If you think about it, when employees say, I just want to be heard, I want my opinions to matter. Take the extra 30 seconds, the extra minute or 2 minutes, or maybe even 5 minutes to stop. Ask some questions. Ask your employees, how is it going? What could we do better? What would you change tomorrow to make your job better, or to make our customer service better? Reach out, listen, and learn. Information that you can get back from employees is absolutely critical for the success of your business. They have more information than you can imagine that's going to help you become better and more successful. And sometimes it's just taking a little bit of time to stop and ask. And there's more time than you think. I know how busy everybody is. Take the time. Take the time, listen, learn. Establish an environment that produces active listening and understanding. I've certainly talked about that. Communication is a very homogeneous topic. One thing impacts the other. So as I talk about these, you can think that through. And the last one here is increase collaboration and productivity through constructive challenge and dialogue. You probably ask yourself, well, yeah, that's a given. Isn't that common? Well, it's not as common as you think. Sometimes the person delivering the message gets shot, or reprimanded, or not listened to, and what you do through your communication, behavior, and building trust, it drives greater collaboration. It also drives greater constructive challenge. I put 2 heads against 1 head any day in terms of consistently being more innovative, more strategic with their thinking, doing what is right without being told what to do. And this is where teams of people, groups of employees, when they get together, and you really release a lot of that constructive and innovative energy, you're going to have stronger and better organizations. And that's why building a culture of engagement doesn't come from waving a magic wand, but it does come from the top of the organization. It does come from the CEO all the way down, and there can be different pockets, but essentially the culture of an organization and building a culture of engagement has to be supported at the very top as well as down through the different layers of the organization, but it's established effectively at the top. Take your worksheet, item 3, building a culture of engagement. spend a few minutes. Think about your organization. Think about what you can do. Think about how the leaders in your company can build a stronger culture. I'll give you 45 seconds. Go ahead. About 20 more seconds. Okay, how-to number 3. You want to provide opportunity for employee development and growth. Okay, so what does that really mean? It means you have to be deliberate. You have to think about each employee who reports to you, and it could even be for employees who don't report to you. But if you think about it for a minute, if you were to engage and help individuals in your company get better, get stronger, build their personal value, provide a greater contribution, your life gets easier. Your company performs better. Challenges and problems are solved more readily. So what you want to do as a manager, as a leader, is you want to think about what employees do today, where the responsibilities are. You want to align the responsibilities effectively. You would be amazed at how many employees I talk to that say, yeah, I know what my job description is, but I don't know how what I'm doing today aligns well to the business and where it's headed. Employees also talk about not understanding where they're headed, what their expectations are. What you want to do is you want to ensure that employees understand what's expected of them. You want to look at each individual and understand what their true potential is and delegate accordingly. Now, for those people who fall into the category of control freak or have control freaks in your company, delegating is really tough. Now, when I say control freak, I say that in the most affectionate way. But the reality is that people who control have a hard time letting go, and that's where delegation is tough. And even when they do delegate, with the slightest sign of failure, they yank it back, and that does a horrendous thing for an individual's and employee's confidence. So what we want to think about is we want to purposely think about how do we help employees grow professionally. And that's not just the technical aspect of what they do, but it's also the interpersonal. It's the leadership. It's the management. It's the decision making, all the things that we want in our employees. This will be item 4 on your worksheet. So how do you increase employee value? These are some things we can talk about. Sorry for the bleed over there in the bottom. We had a little problem with the conversion when we uploaded this, but I think you can still see it. First thing I want managers and employees to do is think about yourself. How do you think as a leader? What is your leadership mindset? We have a system here that we use when we train leaders and managers about the 5 roles of leadership: manager, technician, coach, architect, and trailblazer. The manager and technician piece, that is working in your business. What I mean by that is the manager monitors performance metrics and plans meetings and schedules work, makes sure that the business is running well. And I encourage leaders to make sure your business is running well. The technician is the ability to answer questions, solve problems, and most of us are promoted from a position, a technical position, to a management or leadership position because we were good at the technician part. So an accountant might become a manager of accounting or eventually a CFO at some point because they were good at the technical aspect of the job, which is the accounting component or finance of some sort. Now the coach, architect, and trailblazer, that's working on your business. That's improving the business. The coach works on business relationships and helps people perform more effectively. The architect looks at how the business functions, systems, processes. And the trailblazer looks at better ways of doing things, kind of that crystal ball. Where do we go? Looking at industry leaders or their peer group. What are other people doing in my position? And anybody can display any of these roles as a leader when you climb the corporate ladder, you're going to have a tendency to display a lot more coach, architect, and trailblazer, and very little manager and technician. But you can demonstrate all of these, and they're all important. They all help run the business. That's the in the business piece, and working on the business to improve it, to make it better. So first and foremost, you want to increase employees' value. You as a leader need to think about where you're coming from. How am I viewing my role as a leader so that I have the opportunity to help my employees? Once you understand more about how you're thinking and how you're approaching the business, you want to evaluate individual capability. What is their true potential? What are their limitations? What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? And don't think for a minute that you're going to take a natural weakness that somebody has and turn it into a strength. You're not. Your job is to help them recognize what their full potential is, recognize how to enhance their strengths and how to minimize their weaknesses. Then you need to look for opportunity for employee growth, meaning what new responsibilities can they take on? The last thing in the world you want is an employee that gets bored. And your high performers get bored very quickly. You have to continually challenge them with new opportunities. And it doesn't mean a promotion. What it means is, what can they take on that is going to help them expand their thinking, make them better at what they do, perhaps branch out into other areas of the business. You can do that laterally. But it's certainly very important that you think about, you have to consciously think about, look for opportunities. Then assigning those responsibilities has to be done in alignment with what the individual can take on. Don't, the Peter principle is, certainly it's promoting or pushing someone to the point of failure. We don't want that. What we want to do is we want to push people outside their comfort zone just far enough so they're learning, they're growing, they're challenged, they're going to get comfortable again. Let's push them again and push them again and push them again. And it's giving them the opportunity. The problem with high performers is we load them up. And because they're really good at something, we load them up with the same stuff over and over and over again. And you don't want to risk losing some of your best employees. And then the last one is delegate. The last bullet here is delegating responsibility effectively. And there is a good way and a bad way to do it. Clear expectations, timelines, guidelines, what you can, what you can't do, what your authority level is. There's certain ways to effectively delegate, not just get stuff off your desk. So make sure you're pushing people in an effective fashion that's going to help them grow. Worksheet number 4. I'll give you about 30 or 40 seconds here. Write down increasing the value of your employees. What is your organization doing well and not doing well? Go ahead. Another 10 seconds. Okay. How-to number 4, coach employees for high performance. If anyone on the line has ever been a coach or has known a coach in sports, especially for young kids, you'll already know what some of the coaching skills are. It's not that much different. Obviously, you're dealing with different situations. There's more at stake in business, but when you come to coaching, is really it comes down to human fundamentals. What do people need? What motivates them? What's going to help them achieve more than they'd achieve on their own? And that's what really, that's where I encourage managers, leaders, anybody to think about coaching. And it really comes down to coaching in such a way that people know what's expected of them, and where they don't need, over time, they need less and less and less direction because they're taking on more responsibility on their own because they're becoming more confident and more comfortable. And if you think about any good coach in sports or in business, what they do is they pinpoint those areas where an individual hasn't even identified yet to help them grow in a place where they didn't even know they had the ability. So taking them beyond a level of mediocrity and continuing to push them to a level of high performance. So let's talk about being a mentor and a coach. And we talk about it. We talk about mentorships. We talk about coaching. It's a very deliberate act. It's not something that happens by itself. It can. I don't see it very often because of how busy people are. You have to make the time. You have to become dedicated, and that's where some of the things I already talked about. It's not something that you can take lightly. So the first thing I'd like people to do is first evaluate your ability as a coach. If you're thinking about yourself as a leader, great. But being a leader also means coaching others. And I think part of this is, you can learn to be a leader. You can learn to be a coach. Some people are more naturally inclined than others, but that's okay. What's important here is that you evaluate yourself as a coach, the skills that come with that, and how to improve on them. You want to coach with purpose and avoid weakening tendencies. Coaching with purpose is all about just that. You know who you're coaching, you know why you're doing it, you've identified those areas that are important to them, and the weakening tendencies is not letting people to essentially not do their part, to not step up. Sometimes people will come to this with questions and we give them the answer. Don't give people the answer. Make it a little more difficult. Challenge them. Get them to think for themselves. It's also very important to establish clear non-negotiables. You cannot mentor or coach somebody if they don't have a clear understanding of what the minimum performance requirements are. At that point, it's only performance management, which brings me to the next point. If you get to that point, you do need to confront poor performance consistently and immediately. You don't want to wait. And then finally, you want to leverage every interaction to coach. Now, I know that might be a stretch, every interaction, but coaching can be formal or informal, and most of coaching happens informally. It's looking for those opportunities to tell someone what they've done well, to get them to repeat it, to call them out in a good way. It could be a hallway conversation. It could be a brief, 2-minute conversation in your office or their office or in the cafeteria. It's really whatever it takes to help an individual recognize where their performance can improve, and really, mostly, what are they doing well? You want to reinforce what they're doing well. So, item 5, being mentors and business coaches. How are your leaders doing? Take a few seconds here. I'll give you about 30 seconds, and then we'll get into some questions. Go ahead. Item 5 on the worksheet. Okay, let's see here. So hopefully now you've got a worksheet that is complete. You've got some ideas, some thoughts. Let me just touch on the the what is coaching piece just very quickly again. And the reason why I threw in this extra slide is because coaching does not present itself too often or often enough in organizations. And I just want people to think about it. If you spend literally, I would say if you spend an extra 30 minutes over the course of an entire week making sure that you're spending quality one-on-one time with people, you will find that their performance will go up dramatically. Over time, they'll perform better, and they'll outperform their peers. As you build your organization, that becomes a contagious effect. So let me just summarize here with these few points. If I can get it to work, here we go. So the summary is you want to improve employee morale by improving the working environment. You create a more engaging environment and you improve morale. End of story. You want your managers to think and act more like leaders. And I know that is for some that might mean the same thing. Leadership and management are not identical. Managing the business is a subset of leadership. So people have a management title, but we've got to get them to think and act more like leaders. It said the third bullet here, develop strategic plans. You don't even have to have a plan. You just have to have some strategic thinking. Where are we going? How are we going to get there? What's going to get in our way? Engage in a conversation with people to understand that, and you will overcome almost any challenge that will come your way. And then, finally, make sure leaders are setting meaningful priorities. You think about how much comes at you in a day. It's massive. And there's oftentimes conflicting priorities. Leaders need to be there to help employees understand their value, but also how to connect themselves to the value through what they do day to day, and that's going to be based on priorities. Before I answer any questions, we have just a few more minutes here. I think we have a couple questions. Just want to let everyone know, next month, June 23rd, 2 p.m., we're going to be talking about delegation. So I mentioned delegation today. Join us next month on how to effectively delegate. I touched on it briefly. We'll do a deeper dive next month. Joe, do we have any questions? I think we might have a couple, right?
We do have a couple, David. The first one is, how do you engage people who don't want to be engaged or don't want to share ideas and grow as a team?
Well, in short, you can't. All right, and what I mean by that is there's a willingness versus a capability thing. If people aren't capable, they can learn and be trained. But if someone is not willing to be part of the organization, you got to ask yourself, why keep them if they're not willing? So most of the time, I would say most of the time, it's not a willingness thing, it is a capability thing, and that's really up to the leader. So what I tell people to do is be clear about, with your expectations, outcomes, what you need. Most employees will excel, they really will. But if someone doesn't want to be part of it, it will become obvious, and they'll self-select. They'll select themselves out of the organization if you continue to raise the bar.
Okay, we have another question here. The statistics of how many employees aren't engaged at work is scary. How do you really know employees aren't engaged?
Well, assuming you've done, let's say, after all the surveys you've done, all the questions you've asked, I mean, you need a good, solid feedback loop. Your employees will tell you if they're engaged. They'll tell you through their words and through their actions. And the problem is, it's hard to tell if some people are and if they aren't. And so this goes to, building strong relationships with your employees through trust, what we talked about. If you build strong relationships, employees will share. They will share their feedback with you to say, I don't like that, can we change that? I have suggestions for improvement. If you keep an open dialogue, if you build those strong relationships and you get that feedback, doesn't mean you can act on everything, but it does mean you'll get the feedback you need. And you'll be telling your employees that their opinions do matter. You're going to get lots of information. The stronger, if you build a strong a culture of engagement, you build strong business bonds, relationships in your business, your employees will share lots of information. It doesn't mean you can act on everything, and it doesn't mean you need to act on everything. What it means is you need to just listen. So it's about how, it's about getting the information you need to create a better and engaged culture. So will you have a perfect measure to know if people are or aren't engaged? No, it's going to be tough to have a perfect measure, but if you continue to have that dialogue, you will, and you have to keep your leaders tuned into it, all your leaders tuned into it. You will know who your engaged employees are and who aren't, and that's probably the best way to go at it.
All right, well, those are our questions, and we are right at time.
Well, wonderful. Well, thank you very much for everyone being on the line today. We will make sure that everybody receives the PowerPoint and the handout, and we'll give you the link to the website for a recording if you want to share this with others. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll sign off with, don't forget about next month's webinar, June 23rd. Hope to see you there. Have a great day.